All right, so we're back, and we went through Breishis. We could meet in Breishis, but went to a Pasha Breishis, and now we're into Noach. And we want to discuss a little bit of what's happening over here. Gracious and Noach, really the beginning of the world, our world, is from Noach. Even though it was created in Breishis, and there were a couple of thousand years that Breishis went on, but then it was all wiped off, and we started a new world in Noach, and our world starts from Noach. What was the difference between the world before Noach and the world after Noach?
The world before Noach was very... No. Okay, please explain.
Go ahead.
Look at that. One after the other.
Go ahead.
Okay, before Noah, the world was very... people weren't... They were immoral. And after Noah, people were more moral because they had these 7 laws they could go by.
No.
To restrain the
These 7 laws were given before Noach, right at the beginning of Breishis. Oh? 6, right. No, well, there's no. The question actually is, I'd like you to understand the question. The question is not the fact of its difference, but the cause for the difference. Right? After Noach, of course we know the difference, because Hashem promised there's not going to be a flood anymore, a general flood and so forth. What happened over here? There's an interesting point that it says, the Torah says, by Noach, that after Noach came out of the ark, after the flood, Hashem made a covenant with Noach and with the whole world that there's not going to be a destructive flood anymore. And he made he set a reminder for this covenant. And the reminder was the rainbow. So all the Meforshim ask, the rainbow is just a natural phenomenon. When the sun hits moist air, and it deflects and becomes a rainbow. So the rainbow is not. How is the rainbow supposed to be a reminder? It's a natural thing. It probably preceded. It was before the flood also. And they explain, the Rebbe speaks about this, that actually, in order for a rainbow to form, it's not enough that you have moist in the air. The air itself has to be has to give a certain consistency, a certain clarity. And if it is coarse and if it's heavy, then you won't have it. So what happened is that before the flood, actually there was no, in nature itself, there wasn't that rainbow. And the rainbow came into nature after the flood. Because after the flood, there was a change in the very fabric and the coarseness. The world itself became more refined, physically speaking, became more refined. I want to step back a little bit. I'd like to discuss, the various stages that occurred here from Breshis, and then Noach, the flood, and Der Hafloge, and then into Abraham. When Adam Rishon was created, it says that he was created B'Tselem Elokim. Right? You learn B'Tselem Elokim. What's mean Tselem Elokim? So, all the Mephoshim explained that the union from Tselem Elokim refers to his intellect. That he is different than all other creatures because he possesses intellect. And that's a Tselem Elokim. And yet, despite the fact that he had Tselem Elokim, the first thing we had was Cain killing his brother Hevel. And then, soon after, as it said, the Rambam said, the Pasuk, that in their Enosh, Adam, Sheis, Enosh. Enosh was just the grandson of Adam, third generation. And in their Enosh, already they had started Avodah Zarah. Their Enosh. Adam was still alive. It's unbelievable. And this is people that were created with Tselem Elokim, with all the intellect. And then the world became so corrupt to the point where they were not salvageable. You know what salvageable means? They couldn't be saved. They couldn't be. It couldn't be that through tshuva they should change. It's unalterable. It couldn't be changed back. It became so corrupted. That's why the flood came. The flood is a horrific kind of a punishment. You have to understand what it is. Literally, the whole world was wiped away, washed out. There's a sikha in Rebbe, but the Rebbe asks a very simple question. It says in the Pasuk that we have the Rebbe says I'm going to bring a flood because Molo Ha'oretz Chomos Mipneim. It says in today's Parsha, Molo Ha'oretz Chomos. What is Chomos? Chomos essentially means robbery or dishonesty between people. That's what Chomos means. So the Rebbe asks in the Sikha, there is no place in the Torah that says that for robbery you get killed. It's not a nice thing to do, but that's not a capital sin, a capital punishment for robbery. And so, what does it mean that the whole world was wiped off? So the Rebbe explains that And Rashi, step back a second. Rashi explains, says that actually they were corrupt on many other levels. Even to the extent, like Rashi says, that different species intertwined with other species. It was completely a sick world. I once saw in a Farish that says, he says, that they're finding, and when they dig into old grounds, they find skeletons of animals that don't exist today. Right? These huge animals. Huh? Dinosaurs. Huge, right? So he says an interesting thing. He says that before the Mabul, the whole world was corrupt, and there was interhabitation between different species. When it's an unnatural relationship, it creates an unnatural animal. And this is what happened. This is like almost like testimony to the story of the Mabul. These things, and of course they didn't survive because the Mabul saved only pure and legitimate creatures, not those that were created through corruption.
Do you remember which commentator said this?
I think that this is from Hamek Dover. There's a Pirush on the Chumash from Hamek Dover from the Netziv. I'll check it up. I think this is from where I saw it.
How many years ago this book came out? The writer.
The writer?
Yeah.
The writer was in the time of the Grove, a time about 200 years ago, 250 years ago. So the whole world was corrupt, and the Rebbe says that actually this destruction does not come in the form of a punishment, because as we said, it's not a capital sin. It came because the Rebbe created the world, and that the world should develop and should be and it should grow and should accomplish a purpose. When the world becomes so corrupt that it loses completely its path, there's no world. There's nothing. There's no value in maintaining it. It's not like in the form of a punishment. It's just everything is just falling apart from it. There's nothing to save. This is the extent to which the Deir HaMabul had fallen apart. But you can no longer account for their sins. It's no longer a sin. It's just that there's nothing there. There's no human form left. The world lost its form.
How were the animals able to do something which is totally against their own nature anyway? It's not how it's possible. Maybe it doesn't have any bechira. Animals don't have certain mitzvahs, they just have whatever Hashem programmed them with. How is it possible for them to have relations with another species?
A good question. So I can't go too far into it, but it all starts from the human being. And if the nature of an animal is like it says in the Torah that if a shoyer, an ox, gores, you know what gores means? Yeah. An ox hits a person, it's not natural. But if he gores once, then it can become his nature. He can be corrupted and become his nature. You know, it's not something which he just becomes, he just repetitive action.
But it's still essentially the human's fault. It's not the.
It started from the human being.
It starts from the human being. It's not from the animal originally.
Well, they can
Yeah,
force
but
him.
eventually they corrupted the whole animal, the whole world.
Somewhere along the lines of like the same explanation for like donkeys and horses when they made together. It's not natural, but maybe a human did it that caused them to mate at some point.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Anyway, that's not. So here we have like this with a human being, B'Tselem Elokim, and he becomes so corrupted. And you have to understand another thing. Before the Mabul, there was God's blessing in the world was in abundance. There was nothing missing. There was no such thing as saying a person is missing, is concerned about what he's going to eat for breakfast. There was total abundance of enough supply of wealth, of everything that a person needed. And yet, people have become so corrupt to the point where it was incorrigible. They couldn't even be retrieved. And this is a person with B'Tselem Elokim. And then Noach comes along, and Noach is the only one who Hashem saw that yes, him I can trust. He will be able to save the world. Noach saves the world, and there's a flood, and it comes out, and it's a new world, and as soon as people begin to establish little communities, the next thing we know is the Der Hafloga. You didn't come to that yet, maybe you learned the rest. Der Hafloga, when they built this Migdol, this tower, the Tower of Babel. And the Tower of Babel, was it's a hidden type of an evil, because superficially it appeared like they were trying to keep the community together, keep friendship and all, and peace amongst themselves, but underneath it was a very profound evil. As Rashi explains, as you're going to learn, that actually they were clearly trying to get rid of God. God should not mix into their running, into their community. They will be unified through this tower, and therefore they will not have anything to respond. And then this was disrupted. Ultimately, what we have, and the Pashas Noach at the end, we have Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu comes up on the scene, and this is the beginning of the real world. And as we discussed one time before, pointed out, but how the Rambam describes Avraham Avinu's journey. Avraham Avinu also himself grew up in this society of Avodah Zarah, and according to some portion, the Ibn Ezra says that Avraham Avinu participated in building the tower, because he was in that same age, that same time. and it was the whole world was participant. What was different by Avraham? As we explained, that Avraham had thought into the world and where it's coming from and who is running it. And then when he realized what it's about, he made an extra step. What was the extra step that Avraham Avinu did? He did not stop at saying, okay, now I know where the world is coming from. But he went the step of saying, the world is coming from God, from a power that is beyond God, the world, that is infinite. And the extra step is, and that is the force, that is what we have to bear in mind. This is who you have to worship. This is what you have to serve. This was the big change that Avraham Avinu brought in. And I want to go through these several things that I mentioned and show you the contrast. To start with, the Torah says that the human being was created with Tzelem Elokim, with intellect. Intellect is, as we mentioned many times, we have to always remember, intellect is this godly blessing that Abishai gave the human being, whereby he is able to perceive and understand things beyond his immediate experience. That's what the intellect is about.
One can understand things, is
Huh?
Is it where one can understand things beyond his immediate experience?
Yeah. Perceive and understand. Like, we always give the example, the illustration of intellect, as I explained many times, that everything that exists in a person exists in stages, in different levels. There is the godly, there is the spiritual, and then there's the physical. The intellect on the physical level is the sight, eyesight. And eyesight is different than every other sense in that with sight you can perceive things without ever coming in contact with them. You don't have to touch it to see it. And not only you don't have to touch it to see it, but with sight you see it much more real than what you know by touch. And this is what the intellect is. The intellect gives us the ability to see and understand things and perceive things way beyond our experience, and to see them as very real. That's a Tzelem Elokim. This gives the opportunity for a human being to understand where the world is coming from and what the world is about. But then, that depends again on the choice that a human being makes. He can pursue this understanding and build his life around this concept, or he can use this intellect that Rebbe gave him for self-aggrandizement.
Is that criticism?
What?
Aggrandizement.
Self-aggrandizement simply means, if I understand what you don't understand, that's what the value of my understanding is, that I know something that you don't. And so, Seichel, the Rebbe gave us seichel, gave us this intellect, and allowed us to know things. When the minute that one begins to use this seichel to insist on his opinion and to negate means to go against somebody else, and that becomes the whole part of the seichel, then it becomes counterproductive. Cain and Hevel, right in the beginning the first man, Cain and Hevel were two brothers. They owned the whole world. Right? There was nobody there. They owned the whole world. They had what's called an intellectual dispute. What was the intellectual dispute between Cain and Hevel? So one of the explanations was this. Cain, the Pasuk says that Cain worked the land, and Hevel was a shepherd of sheep. What does this signify? Cain, he said, since that the Adam Rishon sinned, he ate from the Eitz Hadas, and the earth was cursed, therefore we live in a cursed world. And we have to just live at the subsistence level. Subsistence means on the minimum level. The minimum level is you have to work the earth and to have food, and that's all life is about. Because the world is cursed. And that's the philosophy, that's the way you're supposed to live. Hevel said no. Hevel said that everything Hashem created in the world, we have to use. And there are sheep, and the sheep produce wool, and the wool is something which makes a person's life more comfortable and richer. It's on a very simple level. Of course, it goes deeper in that. We have to develop everything. And this was a debate between Cain and Hevel. So this is a legitimate debate, provided that you're interested in the truth. But the minute that it becomes a personal thing, I'm right, no, I am right, what happens? Cain kills Hevel. Hevel wasn't in his way. Hevel wasn't in his way. He can go and live however you want in the whole big world, but Cain kills Hevel. In other words, this seichel that Rebbe gave us does not guarantee that you're going to find the right thing. Because then, despite the fact that you understand and you know, there is a choice element that you have to recognize what is the ultimate truth. What is it? What are you for? And if you use the seichel just to establish, so to speak, your own place, your own strength, then becomes destructive.
When it comes to what?
Destructive. Then came the day of Noach, as we mentioned before, the generation of Noach, the third generation of Adam. And the Rambam explains what happened in day of Noach. They were very smart people. But they figured like this, they said like this. They said that Eibishter Hashem created the world, and He created, let's say, the sun to give us light. So therefore, we have to respect the sun. The truth is that we have to respect the creator of the sun, not the sun. What made them think that they have to respect the sun? This is again a turn in one's intellect. If one would think, if one says the sun it gives light, and you say no, it's not the sun, it is the creator of the sun. That means that in your own world there isn't anything that sustains the world. You're still dependent on Hashem. In that same way, one can turn his mind and say, I don't want to be dependent on Hashem. I want to have something that sustains, that lives, that stands on its own. And therefore the sun stands on its own. And therefore they started developing a whole system of natural powers that maintain the world, and eventually became a whole system of Avodah Zarah. Excuse me? A whole system of Avodah Zarah. And it all involved a lot of smarts, a lot of wisdom, a lot of different conniving. And the point of it all, it was all utilizing, so to speak, the human intellect, but for the wrong purpose. Then came the Mabul as a result. Then, after the Mabul, came the Der HaFloga. Right? The Der HaFloga. Very similar thing. Very similar thing. People came out of the ark and they started developing, and they were again learning and studying and so forth, and they came to the conclusion that instead of depending on the Eibishter, because the Eibishter is the one who created the world, and the Eibishter is one who gives the sustenance. The Eibishter, Hashem created within the world the means by which it can sustain itself. And one of the means is that if we have peace, or we cooperate amongst ourselves, then nothing can disturb us. Again, using all kinds of, the power of the intellect, the Tzelem Elokim, but using it in the wrong way. What was Avraham Avinu? Avraham Avinu had the same discovery. He also studied the world, and he also went from step to step to understand what's going on. He also was looking at the sun and at the moon and at the stars and everything else. And he also realized that Hashem created the stars and the moon. But, as I said, he went one step further. And he said that since Hashem is the one who created them, therefore, he is the real thing, the real purpose of the world. The real purpose of the world is to recognize Hashem's presence and to serve Him, rather than those things that we can identify, that we can identify within the world. This changed around, and the whole phenomenon, the whole presence of the world. this is a principle that gives us an understanding what it is, what is the intellect. So it's all Tzelem Elokim. It's all the intellect. Even in today's world, in our world, this is an important thing because we are all exposed to this. Even in our world, up to this time, there is the idea that is very, very commonly accepted, that the whole world is something which has developed from within itself. You heard of the idea that the human being evolved from a monkey?
They teach at school.
Huh?
They teach that in school.
I'm sorry?
They teach this kind of stuff in public school.
They teach it kind of stuff in public school. What's the idea behind it? I mean, as stupid as it is, what pushes a person to come up with this kind of an idea?
You don't want to have limitations and rules.
Excuse me?
You don't want limitations and rules. You don't want somebody to rule you.
They want to?
They don't want limitations and rules. They don't want a real reason for their existence.
Maybe they don't.
Well, that's true. They want essentially that to view the world from the perspective that everything can be explained within this world structure itself. There is nothing outside. There is nothing that I cannot understand. So they went to this kind of a depth, this type of an idea, just in order to maintain, see, intellectually per se, really, it doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense. Why, when a person goes in that direction, it is not his intellect per se that directs him there. It is his choice. This is what it's possible to take the intellect and pervert it, corrupt it. It is his choice. What is his choice? His choice is like something along the line that you said, but broader than that. To say that there is a power which is beyond my understanding and beyond my observation. I cannot see it, and I cannot sense it, I cannot understand it. Means admitting that there is something that I cannot know, something bigger than myself. This I cannot accept. This I cannot accept. And therefore, I go and I, so to speak, harness. I direct my whole intellect to understand the world from the world, within the world itself. And I come up with ideas that are totally that destroy my own intellect, that delegitimize my own intellect. That says my intellect is really not intellect. But it's all worth it. It's all worth it. This is the extent to which the Rebbe created that Tzelem Elokim, a human being, with seichel, with the ability to really know and understand the truth. And yet, without proper guidance, without the proper discipline, without the recognition of the truth per se, that itself can be so destructive as we have today.
Without what? Without the recognition of the truth?
Right. Without the willingness to accept the truth. That's essentially what it is. The truth is something which needs to be accepted because we cannot understand it. This is what we say in davening every day. We say it in davening every day. You remember those words? Umoide al ha'emes. What does moide al ha'emes mean? Huh? Moide means he should submit to the truth. In other words, the truth is not something that you can understand. The real truth you know because you're moide to it. You accept it, you submit to it. If one insists that the truth is only something that he can understand, and beyond that he doesn't want to know, then his own intellect will pervert his way, his life. This is the meaning when it says that the world, even though that since the time when the world was created, it says Yom Hashishi Vaychul Hashamayim, right? Yom Hashishi. So Rashi says, if you remember Hashishi, what is Hashishi? In the other page it says Sheni Shlishi Revi'eh Chamisha. Doesn't say Hachemishi, Hashishi, Hashlishi. What's Hashishi? Hashishi, the sixth. That refers to the sixth day of Sivan, when the Torah was given. Because the world did not have a real basis for existence until Torah was given. When the Torah was given, this is when what is the Torah? The Torah is God's presence in the world, but God gave us direction what to do, what not to do. He gave us mitzvahs. Mitzvahs are something which we do just because God told us to do it, not because we understand. So therefore, this guaranteed that from now on, since the Torah was given, that whatever intellect we will use, the intellect will be after we recognize the truth. We will not rely on our intellect to detect and tell us what the truth. First, we know the truth because we were given the truth. Moed al ha'emes. And then you learn and try to understand and to know it. And that's when the world became a solid place. That's when the world, the Gemara says, that's when the world became solidified. it'll stand healthy, it'll stand steady. And this phenomenon we see directly if we go through the Pasha Breshis, throughout the various sections, Breshis, and then Noach, up until Avraham Avinu. This is something which is reflective in every person. Everything that happens in the whole world happens in every person. Because a human being is representative, is a microcosm of the whole world. When a person starts up, he thinks that the whole world's about him. Everything is about me. He thinks that he can stand on his own feet. He doesn't need anything else. He is completely self-sufficient. And what sufficient means? He can completely self-support. His mind and his heart and his feet and his hands, this is the whole world. And with this process, he goes through all kinds of different ups and downs. In his own mind and his own experience, his own intellectual and emotional experiences. This is the concept of moods. Did you ever hear of a mood, what a mood is? A person is in bad mood. What is a bad mood? What's a bad mood? Things didn't go my way. They're supposed to go my way, but they didn't. How come?
The wrong way.
Excuse me?
The wrong way.
Going the wrong way, right? Until the person, we step back a second. We have different stages in a human being. We have child, infancy, childhood. We have teen, young people, young adults, and then adulthood, and then maturity. I hope everybody should go into adulthood and should be mature. What is maturity? What is maturity? I'd like you to understand this. Mature? Huh? You got it? Tell me how you translate it.
So you like
Realist.
realist. Like grown men.
What's a grown man? What's a grown man?
Responsible.
Huh?
You're responsible, reliable.
Right, but these are the symptoms. What's behind it?
Realize the world.
Basco?
You know the truth. You know what about.
When you have a little young tree, put a young tree, a sapling, you put it in the ground, and it stands. But if you see it, you have to tie it down and give it and anchor it, because it can't stand on its own. Because and any wind will come and topple it up. Any wind will come and topple it up. As it grows and it sends out roots into the ground, becomes deeply rooted into the ground, then this tree can bend along with the wind one way or the other, and every time it bends one way, it will straighten out. Bends the other way, it will straighten out. Why? Because when it's thought, when the little tree is just the tree that you see on top of the ground, it cannot stand. It'll be toppled over. But when the tree takes root in a form of language, in form of speech, it means that it knows that it is not standing on its own. It's being held up by the entire world. And in the world there are winds. The winds sometimes come from the east, sometimes comes from the west. And it can accept it. Same thing is maturity in a person. The person grows and becomes, and he's very, he develops and he learns a lot and he knows a lot and he's very proud of himself. That's not maturity. There's a saying from a big philosopher which was quoted in Torah. Even though a philosopher said it, but it's quoted in Torah, that the real knowledge is when you reach the point where you know that you don't know. That was not Socrates, that was Aristotle. What does that mean? You know that you don't know. So what's the value of your knowledge? If you know that you don't know, so what's the point of knowledge? The answer is that which you don't know, that's the truth. And you're relying on the truth. If you rely on that which you know, then you haven't reached maturity yet. The same thing is in our lives. Mitzvah Hashem, each one of you is going to have to face the world. It's going to have to build your home. And you say to yourself, how am I going to do it? If you're going to rely on that which you already know, then you are not really facing the real world. When you go into the real world, you don't know what the future holds. You don't know what the eventuality holds. You know one thing, that it's real, it's true, and that it has a godly purpose, and that if you follow through, so to speak, and you do what you need to do at the moment, with Nebuchadnezzar's heel, God will lead you in the right direction. This is maturity. I once mentioned to you the story of the mother. What time is mine?
7:20.
Whenever you finish.
It was a story that once I read going back many years ago. This is in the papers here in this country. A shocking story. This occurred before the First World War. The First World War was in 1917, 1918, 1920. Before that. So there were two brothers, two young, healthy men. Their mother was very concerned that they shouldn't be drafted into the army. When America entered the war, they shouldn't be drafted into the army. So she went and she hid her two sons in the basement. In her basement. And she provided for them everything that they needed. She would come down, she would bring him food, she would clean up, she would do the laundry. Okay? And they were secure and sound. Were never found. She kept them in that basement until after the Second World War. They came out of the basement, I think, in the early 50s. Over 30 years. But at that time, they were 50, 60 years old. There's a story that was, I remember reading it in the paper. It was an amazing, shocking story. So, this lady, this loving mom, she protected her sons. And they came out from their basement. Perfect idiots. It's the best way you can describe it. They had absolutely no knowledge of the world. They were not part of the world at all. But they were healthy. They had their exercise machines, I didn't know what. They ate. Their food was good and healthy. Excuse me? Total idiots. I know my own experience. I was in Paris when I was a young bocher, in yeshiva in D Noach. I was a young boy. And now I happened to be, my grandson got married in France, so I went to the chassan. I said, I have to go to D Noach to the yeshiva. I have to go to the yeshiva. And when I was, my lifetime. When I was a young boy, 12, 13 years old, I could travel in Paris without any difficulty. I knew, the subways in this system over there is very simple. I was able to go to D Noach and come back now. I'm not the guitar, I can't even begin to find anything. Anyway, finally, I got onto the train, I got into D Noach, and I was sure from the train station to the yeshiva, I know it blindfolded. Right? This is a long period of time. I don't recognize anything. Zero. I was standing over there, I said, this is Benoit? Forget that the world moves, right? And things happen. All you have to do is build up another little store, another street, another finish. You don't recognize anything. Anyway, these two young men came out healthy and well, and they never matured. They never participated in real life. In mature life, you're sitting over here, okay, and there's no question that sometimes somebody that does something that you don't like, somebody says something that you don't like, somebody spits. It's not nice to spit in front of other people. Well, he spit. And that destroys your whole day. I can't learn because I saw this man spit. Okay? You have to understand. Maturity means that you live in the real world. Not in your world. In God's world. And you get the guidance from God, from that. There's reality to it. You can't, if you're going to try to protect yourself in your little basement, make sure you don't see anything that you don't like. That's not life. This is the Der Hafloga. The Der Hafloga, they wanted to create a boundary for the whole human being, the whole human race. We're all together, we're all one, there's nothing more. Hashem created a human race, human being. You know what human being is? There's not two human beings that think the same way. Not two. And each one is going to to think a little bit differently and bring out a different thought.
Even twins.
Excuse me?
Even twins.
Even twins. That's right. Not two human beings that think alike. Now we have billions of human beings. And that's the world into which Hashem put us. And the only way for us to accept it and to live in it is to recognize that we live in Hashem's world. And this is what Avraham Avinu had taught. Started from Avraham, and then ultimately in the Torah. With all our wisdom, if you recognize Hashem's presence, then we live in a real world. And if we don't, God forbid, then it's not real. And then you don't know where it's going to lead to. It can lead to the Hafloga, it can lead to monkey ancestry, it can lead to anything. So now we're starting a new world, a new year, and you have to understand, this is what it's all about. Success here in the yeshiva means that you recognize that there are different people, and that all the different people are there from, everyone brings something else. Everyone is another creation from God. Hashem should help each one of us that we should grow and mature and be able to stand on our feet, not because we are lying on our feet, but because we trust Hashem. And then maybe she will help each one of us to succeed in the long term. What we need to succeed in the ancient world.
Amen.
Right. Bingo.
Bingo. Is that what you said?